All right, well, hello everyone and welcome. We're excited to have you join us for the session at 12:45 today with Kevin, Sarah, and Jeff from Cuyahoga Community College. And today they're going to be sharing with us a little bit about engaging students and faculty with adaptive courseware, and their session description says that they're really going to be exploring the design and implementation process of integrating adaptive learning courseware into a series of courses across multiple disciplines. So I know I'm excited for the session. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kevin, Sarah, and Jeff. And Logan is here to support your IT needs if you're having any problems in the session, and I'll be here to moderate the chat. So we're looking forward to your session. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. And I think Kevin and Sarah are here.
All right, hi everybody. Good afternoon, and hopefully your lunch was good. I always wonder if it's good or bad to have the session after lunch, but you can still eat during the session if you haven't finished up. As we were introduced, my name is Kevin Dranuski. I'm the Senior Instructional Designer at Cuyahoga Community College, and with me.
And my name is Sarah Goode. I'm an instructional technologist at Cuyahoga Community College.
And my name is Jeff Rodgers, and I'm also a senior instructional designer at Tri-C. Yep.
Okay, so we can move to the next slide here. So, you know, we've probably met you or worked with many of you before, but just to give you a little background who we are. We are the Center for Learning Excellence. We are located on every campus that Tri-C has. We have our Western Campus, Metropolitan Downtown, our West Shore on the west side, and our East Campus on the east side. And our West Campus also serves the Brunswick University Center. So each campus has their little hub, and each hub is composed of senior instructional designer and technologist. And two of our sites have part-time instructional support specialists who kind of are like gifted generalists. They have experience both in technology and course design. So we're able to provide a wide range of support. Basically what we do, we provide staff who teach in multiple different modalities, face-to-face, blended, and, you know, as everyone knows right now, fully online. And our goal is just to make sure that, you know, we see that faculty use effective use of instructional technologies or pedagogy and, you know, the appropriate means of course design for their teaching and learning, where we ultimately want to you know, promote student success. In addition to normal facilitations, we regularly design workshops and professional development opportunities. We work on a lot of college-wide committees, and that is one reason how we found ourselves wrapped up in this adaptive courseware grant that we are part of, which we're going to get into. If at any time you have questions about the content, Jeff and Sarah will be in the chat while I'm talking, and then once I turn over the presentation to them, we'll also be answering questions in chat. We'll also provide our contact information and the slides at the end of the presentation. So I think we can move on. So how we're going to approach the presentation today is, you know, looking in kind of at our project workflow of what we got introduced to last spring from Achieving the Dream, which we'll detail a little more, and how we kind of structured for success with the CLEs, partnering with our faculty and other collaborations that we had around the college with our faculty development teams and our online learning and academic technology departments who are responsible for our Blackboard LMS. And then we'll talk about how we kind of, once we got our bearings, how we implemented everything and how we made adaptations to from semester to semester. Okay, so for many of you, adaptive courseware you might not be too familiar with, and to be honest, I don't know if many of us were either. I have heard of the term. I knew what it did. I've never worked with it, and Jeff and Sarah can share, you know, their experience as well. But it was pretty much new to everybody. We had one or two faculty who were using existing software through their publisher, who wanted to be part of this. Was very helpful. But we thought we'd start out with a kind of a definition of what adaptive courseware is, and pretty much it provides students with a more personalized and nonlinear approach to instruction. The learning is student-centric, and what the software does is it kind of creates a custom path for each student based on their prior learning or their prior skills on specific course material. And for the faculty, it provides data for that faculty member to make changes into the design of their course. So, if I had to do a quick summary of what adaptive courseware was, think of it as technology that's collecting student data through the student assessments. It kind of analyzes that data, and then it uses what it pulls together to personalize learning paths for each student. And it reports recommendations to the instructor of how to personalize the learning experience for each individual.
Right, and I would add to that too, that one of the things that we did learn is that there's a variety of different type of, I guess, adaptive programs and engines that are out there. And so they weren't all performing, I guess, the exact same, and they weren't all creating and customizing things in the exact same way. So it just depends on the different types of engines, or in some cases, artificial intelligence that were being used by some of the different developers.
Exactly. Yep. So you can move ahead here. So what happened in March 2019? We received an email from our faculty development team saying, hey, we'd like you to come downtown for a meeting. And, that's not unusual. Normally it's the plan, that semester's worth of faculty development, and, our online learning teams there telling us of improvements that they're making to our Blackboard training, which we call Blackboard Bootcamp, anything that we need a heads up. But it was much different. So it involved several individuals from Achieving the Dream, and two coaches from Achieving the Dream were there, along with faculty members from other institutions. And in March was when they informed us that we've been accepted as part of this grant, and that the CLEs would be working very closely with faculty to implement vet this new technology per discipline, which Jeff will get into, design the courses around it, and make sure that it is functional by that summer semester and a full rollout for August. So we had about 2 months to learn all of this, vet all of this. And Jeff kind of was a godsend creating this guide, which he'll go over, that made it, easier for us. So the Achieving the Dream coaches came out a few times in March and April to kind of prep us. So like I said, we sat down initially in March. So ultimately what the grant covered is we entered into this collaboration with Achieving the Dream. And what they had asked us to do was to launch kind of this information sharing professional development opportunity for faculty to explore the use of adaptive courseware. They had a handful of universities and colleges around the country that were doing it, and they wanted to get a community college approach. So some things that they asked specifically from us was to create a faculty learning community, and that we designed it to explore kind of existing technology that was there, and also to incorporate these adaptive technologies into their existing courses. From that, we kind of share the best practices, and then we also had agreed to kind of present our experiences as designers and technologists, which is kind of what we're doing today. So kind of how we started, they identified the college's gateway courses, which we will define here in a little bit, as the starter courses for this grant. And then we began pairing faculty with CLE staff. Jeff will go into a little more detail about that, the courses, and kind of how we structured for success. But overall, the role of the CLEs, we were asked to provide this comprehensive and creative course design support to these faculty who had agreed and volunteered their courses, incorporating this flexible adaptive courseware. Our hopes were, that we create an engaging and more personalized student learning experience, where they kind of wanted to promote confidence and the competencies and consistencies of students meeting those successful outcomes. So from that, I will turn, that's kind of the background of how we got to where we were in, less than 30 days. And Jeff will kind of go into how we structured for success.
All right, thank you, Kevin. So so we had a very short time to try to figure out what we wanted to do with faculty. Achieving the Dream had done this about 1 year, I think, previous. So they weren't able to really articulate a lot of best practices to us initially because they didn't really have any yet. And so that was kind of a unique situation for us. Every time we asked, hey, can we do this or should we do this? So they was just, yep, go ahead. Sure, try it out. So one of the things that we did was we wanted to make sure that we were targeting the right type of student and being able to provide the data that was required for achieving the dream. So we decided that the best solution would be to go with gateway courses throughout the college. And so we identified which courses would be the better ones to initially approach faculty for. And then initially we ended up with 18 different faculty members from various disciplines throughout the college. And so they were provided ESUs, which are like service credits that the faculty have to earn throughout their year. And they basically, this, like Kevin mentioned, was in March when this was initiated, and we had to decide and choose faculty probably within, it was like 2 or 3 weeks. But the faculty then were going to have about 1 month to vet and decide which kind of software or adaptive experiences they were going to decide and work with. And then about 3 months to work with us to build their courses over the summer so that they could be ready to go and roll out the start of the fall semester. So one of the things we did is we partnered each of the different faculty disciplines with an instructional designer and an instructional technologist. And so we had these different teams that we created so that we could help guide and work with faculty individually and within their discipline. So that was a nice, I guess, effective way to kind of quickly work with a lot of different faculty. And so one of the things that we did is we created something called an adaptive courseware site within Blackboard. So we created this Blackboard website that we enrolled all the faculty in so that we could provide a lot of information as well as communicate within as a group. So one of the things that we found is that in order to explore a lot of the different types of adaptive publishers, some faculty were taking it upon themselves to I guess, schedule visits with different vendors. So we would be talking and find out that one vendor had just been to the school like 2 or 3 days earlier to talk with another group on psychology, and now he was coming back for math. And so as the instructional designers and technologists, we decided it would be probably better for us to coordinate a lot of those publisher visits, so then we could populate that information into the Blackboard site. So then faculty, if they couldn't attend one visit, they could meet with that representative if they were going to be on campus again, because we are 4 different campuses spread throughout Cuyahoga County. So it was possible that they could be visiting Tri-C, but going to a different part of like the city or a different campus. We also created some adaptive courseware trainings for faculty and helped them create some different workshop materials that we could provide to them. We'll talk about the adaptive courseware guide that we created here next, but you can kind of see some of the other things that we helped faculty create and also put within that Blackboard site. And next we want to bring up our adaptive courseware information guide. So after we were initially proposed with this task of being involved within Achieving the Dream and helping faculty design adaptive courses, Achieving the Dream also had a conference at the end of April. So we had a little over a month to prepare to attend, to send some faculty and some of the designers to Minneapolis for this conference on adaptive courseware. And one of the things that was mentioned to us was that it would be really nice if the faculty could have something to read on the plane there, something that just might help them explain what adaptive courseware is, and maybe some things that might help them decide what questions to ask while they're at the conference. And so Sarah and I took this challenge, and we sat down and started to kind of list some things that we might want to provide for faculty. And then there is a website called EdSurge that actually has a component to it where they identify different types of adaptive courseware and rate them. Actually, the companies themselves self-report different aspects of their adaptiveness and it's put together in this website. So we kind of went through that website, went through our own trainings within a couple weeks. I think we scheduled several different orientations with different vendors so that we could get information from them and figure out what we wanted to include. And we came up with about 20 pages worth of a guide that we provided for faculty so that they could have this at the start of this conference in April. And then it has since kind of grown on its own. We've made it an open educational resource by having it licensed as a Creative Commons license for it. So it is something that we're happy to share with you. And I'll bring it up here really quick because I'm going to switch over just to kind of give you an idea of what it is. And I think, Kevin, you can let me know if we can see this.
Yeah, you're good. You can see 2 page. Oh, there you go. 1 page.
Yep, 1 page. I'll make it a little bit bigger here.
Yep. And we'll make this available too.
Yeah.
With the slides.
So it's, I updated it actually just recently here, but you can kind of see there's a lot of different aspects, a lot of different product reviews that we have in there. When we have had faculty that have used these particular different pieces of adaptive courseware, we've tried to put feedback and information in there about that. It's created specifically for Tri-C, but because it's an open source, you're welcome to modify it for your institution as well. But it's something that we've put a variety of different types of information in there, as well as how to implement the courseware. So we put like a timeline in there. We also have different considerations that faculty have, so that if you are going to be meeting with faculty, if you're an instructional designer, it kind of gives you some approaches. And then it goes down into having some information about some of the different courseware that's out there. So you can kind of see how we organized it to let faculty know what disciplines it covers, what kind of support they have, things that we felt would be important for a faculty member in order to try to make an informed decision about which product they might want to explore. And then the last part of the guide is actually a section on how to kind of roll out an adaptive courseware. You can see there's a lot of different reviews. That's the bulk of it.
There's more than I would have ever guessed when we started this. So
right. So we've talked about different aspects of the course design, where adaptive courseware can be placed. There's also some things about data considerations. And then how to onboard not just faculty, but students specifically. So that was an aspect of something that we really hadn't considered initially. But I'm going to go ahead and flip back over to our PowerPoint here. So one of the things we figured out throughout our whole entire process was when working with faculty or approaching faculty about thinking if they're going to want to adopt an adaptive technology. One of the aspects that we try to inform them about is they need to think about how they're going to integrate the adaptive courseware. And so the different ways you can kind of think of that would be to have it either introduce a topic or content. Adaptive courseware can also be used to reinforce skills or knowledge in the form of like quizzes that students would be able to take and repeat, and then it would direct them through the path, so that way, you know, if they know a particular answer or a particular skill or topic, they don't have to spend a lot of time on it. It naturally allows them to progress through that. And if they are struggling, sometimes it will bring them back and then have them reinforce a particular skill. You could also use it as an assessment, whether it's formative or summative, usually more formative. And then the last thing would be for instructors to use it to inform their teaching. So because it has a lot of data analytics available throughout, one of the things that we've found that some faculty really like that aspect, because they can go in throughout a week or over a weekend or before the start of a class and see, okay, I can see exactly what type of questions students were struggling with, so that I can make sure that I address that in this week's class or this particular class. I can see almost at a granular level which students are struggling with which type of issues. And so it can really be used to inform teaching if faculty choose to use that. And then finishing up here, my section of it, one of the things that we did create was a faculty learning community that did meet monthly, and it did include all 4 campuses and all the disciplines. So one of the nice things was with this is a lot of faculty could certainly share their experiences, but also communicate what kind of which software was working better for which and how they wanted to use it to inform their teaching. So that was one of the biggest things that I noticed was shared a lot, was how faculty would utilize some of the data analytics that was provided by the adaptive experiences that their students were experiencing. Another aspect was the partnership with the bookstore, because a lot of the faculty were more involved, I should say, with the pricing and the negotiation of this. And so because of that, a lot of the prices were able to be very low. So that not only was this a way to help improve student performance within the course, but we were also able to, in many cases, reduce the cost of instead of having a textbook, basically students were using the adaptive experiences. And so that really helped to bring down a lot of the costs. For our psychology course specifically, they were using an OpenStax OER source that the publisher or the adaptive publisher was using as well. So the students were basically getting the textbook for free, as well as the whole adaptive experience for about $25 of a total cost. So that was a very nice takeaway for the faculty.
Jeff, if I could just add to that,
Sure.
when you folks get to take a look at the guide, we actually have it listed out in there, some of the low cost options, the coursewares that have options that I think are less than $50.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so now that Sarah is there, I will turn it over to Sarah.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
It's a nice segue.
Yeah. So if you look at the slide here, this is kind of a recap of the process of selecting the courseware and getting ready to implement it, what it looked like. We had to look at whether or not the courseware was going to be compatible with our learning management system, and Tri-C is currently on Blackboard, so we really didn't have too many issues as far as compatibility goes. What we did want faculty to be aware of, though, is was it going to be an integration into Blackboard, or was it going to be a separate website that students would then have to leave Blackboard and then go log into, which can kind of create its own set of logistical issues. We also took a look at the accessibility of the courseware product. After faculty had kind of narrowed things down to a couple of different options, as Jeff and Kevin had mentioned, we brought vendors on site and they gave demonstrations. We were able to get demo accounts to test out these coursewares for accessibility purposes. We were able to work with our online learning department, which manages our Blackboard instance. They were incredibly helpful in getting new integrations tested and implemented into the system. One thing that we initially hadn't thought about, but became very important in this whole process, is how do we onboard students to this adaptive courseware? Because as Kevin had mentioned, this was new to us. So it was certainly going to be something brand new to students. So we worked with Achieving the Dream. They helped us out, and we crafted syllabus statements that faculty could add to their syllabi if they wanted, kind of just letting students know that this course was going to be using this new type of courseware, and kind of getting them ready to understand what this experience was going to be like. We helped faculty create introductory videos where they would talk about, again, what is this adaptive courseware, and this is how the courseware is going to fit in the structure of this course. To go back to the slide that Jeff had, I think a couple slides ago, how is this particular faculty member going to use the courseware within the course? So they were able to explain that to their students, that this is going to introduce content, or based on how you do on these assessments, this is how we're going to proceed with the class. We also made sure that students knew that there was data that was being collected based on their experiences. This was going to be anonymously done, just so they knew that this particular course was part of the grant process. For functionality, we just wanted to make sure that faculty were clear with their students on how the adaptive process works with that particular courseware. They wanted to make sure that students were taking their time and actually working through the adaptive courseware, so it gave them and the instructor a truer sense of student mastery of knowledge and where they were at with the content, as opposed to them just rushing through, and then the instructor doesn't know, they don't have a true measure of where that student is with their content for that particular unit. All right, and I think this was mentioned already, but we did work with faculty and the bookstore. Our bookstore is part of the Barnes & Noble system, and we were able to let the bookstore know that we did have a number of faculty that were participating in this grant. And our faculty, and I think this is kind of common across colleges, they do need to have bookstore orders in very early. So we had to work with the bookstore and let them know that we might have some people making some changes in their textbook selections. We also worked with faculty to negotiate low-cost pricing for this adaptive courseware. As I previously mentioned, we do have a list of several low-cost options that our faculty were able to negotiate with some certain vendors. We also worked with the bookstore to implement our first day program as part of the adaptive courseware, and what we will do there is the course materials, the price for the adaptive courseware product is built into the course fee. So students pay that ahead of time, and then on the first day of class, everybody has their materials and there's no waiting for financial aid to come through, so students can purchase their books. Okay, so we had a kind of a trial run in the summer, and everybody implemented in the fall. And then we took what we learned in the fall to make some adaptations for the spring and summer semesters. We continued to meet as designers and technologists with our project team of faculty. We always stayed in touch about how students were doing, how things were going with the courseware, were they experiencing any problems. We reviewed the design and how the faculty members had implemented the courseware, and we did have some faculty members kind of change how they used the courseware based on their experience in the fall. We had a number of faculty survey their students and get the student feedback, and they did get some pretty positive results from those surveys. So we did have some faculty, as I mentioned, change how they were using the courseware, and some faculty changed the courseware itself. They switched from one vendor to another after experiencing a specific platform for a semester. And I was personally working with one of our faculty members on a piece of courseware that we had some issues. I will say, for the most part, our faculty had very positive experiences with these courseware. But this one in particular, there were some technology promises that were made. The courseware would do certain things, and it didn't. And then towards the end of the semester, we found out that 2 weeks of data were missing in Blackboard from the courseware, and this was not a Blackboard issue; it was a courseware issue. So we ended up making a switch to something that faculty member had previously used prior to fall semester, and things have gone relatively smoothly.
That was a nice way of putting that.
Yeah, had to be diplomatic about it.
And one thing we could also add to that is faculty who had initially started implementing adaptive courseware were very much ahead of the game when it came to moving to online during the whole COVID move to online that we all had in March. Specifically, our psychology department had adopted it for the entire at least Eastern campus for the spring semester. So they piloted it in the fall, and then they rolled it out so that all of the psychology, basically our Psychology 101, or what we call 1010 course, was going to be used that. So we trained all of the adjuncts who were teaching it in the fall. And so even though they were teaching face-to-face initially, they had sort of a hybrid course going on because they were using the adaptive courseware. And so when those faculty were forced to go fully online in March, they had a much easier time of it because there was so much that adaptive courseware was able to offer the students.
Yeah, and Jeff mentioned the psychology department at East Campus. They scaled their efforts, and also the business administration department at East, they were able to scale as well. So we did see an increased usage of the coursewares in spring semester. Okay, if we can pop to the next slide, please.
There we go.
Okay, I guess that's it. So here's our contact information. I see there are some of you asking some questions in chat. Please feel free to reach out to any one of us regarding the use of the adaptive courseware and our experiences with it. We will share this PowerPoint along with the guide, so you can, if you're traveling anywhere anytime soon, you can have some light reading to take with you.
Yeah. So some of the questions in there, yeah, they were asking for the materials. So as Sarah just mentioned, we will provide that. It's good to see that some people were using adaptive courseware with some of their programs, and that's great to hear. I have some notes here. I was going to make the point that Jeff made about the transition to online was much easier for certain disciplines that incorporated this. One thing that we did do and that we did make sure, which I'm glad it happened when it did, when we did our FLC, we made a commitment that the faculty, we all had to attend and participate face-to-face. Even though when we generally deal with 4 different campuses of stuff, we try to utilize our remote technologies as much as possible. But we just felt like we would have better discussion amongst 18 faculty members, and we can demo stuff and troubleshoot stuff during these meetings. And we've never had a problem with attendance, and sometimes the meetings would run over an hour just because the discussion kept going, and they were learning about each other's software and coursewares, and surveys that they shared with their students, and that enabled other people to share stuff as well. We took meeting notes to recap stuff. So I think meeting face to face as an FLC was a big advantage to this process.
Yes, and I was looking at some of the questions that are popping up in the chat. Rebecca had asked if we could show a demo of adaptive courseware. I don't have the ability to do that. I don't know if Kevin or Sarah, if you do. Because
no, I don't think so.
There's so many different.
Yeah, it would be in the faculty classes. generally, one of you mentioned when we were vetting these different vendors, how we got access, where we asked for demo accounts, and they would say, okay, give me the email addresses, and they would give us like a 2-week trial of their software for all the CLE staff and the faculty who were interested. But pretty much if you don't teach those classes, that's kind of when our access went away.
Right, and there was a lot of different screenshots and things that they're also available that we could find or able to go through and look for online. But there is such I guess, a vast difference in the way that a lot of these different publishers create and provide their adaptive experiences. So I think one of the best advice that we can give is to really, if you're an instructional designer, to sit down with your faculty to try to get an idea of how they would like to utilize and where they would like to have adaptive experiences put into the course. And as a faculty member, maybe trying to think of different ways or how you might want to use it as a way to either reinforce or to review this a particular skill or topic, because that would help you maybe direct you to the type of particular publisher or vendor that you would want to go to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. They all kind of blurred together, once we were going through this. We were doing multiple vendor demos a day and different campuses and streaming them. And but the one thing I would suggest to faculty, if you go down this road, ask for anything that you want. They were very willing to negotiate. So the majority of our coursers, I think would safe to say that we're under $50.
Yeah.
And then we, a lot of them, the vendors worked closely, because if a course didn't do the first day attendance or first day like book policy, these vendors would give access to the students manually for about 3 weeks until their financial aid kicked in and they can purchase access codes or the course materials. And that was just a simple ask. So if you have any barriers or you need them to work, just the worst they're going to say is no. So, maybe over ask at first and see what you can get.
Well, I think we even had one faculty member who was able to get some free accounts for 30 students, 60 students or something like that for the semester, just because they asked. So
let's see if there's any more in chat. The evaluation link was just shared in the chat, so make sure you give us some feedback. Are there any questions that we've missed? If not, if we did, I know we have like 5 minutes here. Shoot us an email. We're more than happy to help. We're not going anywhere. We're at our computers all day. So.
Thank you so much for this really great presentation. There's been a lot of requests for the guidelines document that you shared. So would you prefer, Jeff, for them just to reach out directly to you to get a copy of that?
They're certainly welcome to. I'll be happy to provide that. There's also a workbook that we're finishing up, myself and then one of the instructional designers from Achieving the Dream. In fact, Kevin and Sarah and I have all worked with her as well, but we're doing a presentation at OLCI Innovate here in June, and we're going to be using that workbook. We put it together for that particular presentation because it was initially going to be in person as a workshop, but when that conference got moved online, we decided to make it basically as a PDF, but I would be happy to share that document as well. It's more for instructional designers, so it's a way to sort of walk through with faculty, and you can kind of type right into that particular workbook if you wanted to, but I'd be happy to share that sort of guidebook for creating and developing courses, as well as our guide for faculty to adopt it.
Fantastic, thank you. Right, are there any additional questions for our presenters?
All right, well, thank you.
Thanks so much. We appreciate the wonderful presentation. There is a link for the evaluation for this session that I just put on there. And of course, our next sessions and final breakout sessions begin at 1:45, and then we'll have our closing presentation. If you heard something really great today, please do jump onto that collaborative PowerPoint presentation, the bit.ly link that Chuck shared at the beginning of the conference today, and I'm going to repost that right now in the chat for you. Create a quick slide so that you can share with everyone what you learned in this presentation today. We wish everyone a great rest of the conference. I'm sharing that right now, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.